Growing up, I always put a lot of pressure on myself, and just pretty much everything I did. I had a lot of issues with lying because I didn't accept failure. Whenever I would fail, I would feel horrible, and I would kind of justify that in my head, and I would do anything it took to get out of that situation. I was always happy and felt great, but then the second I failed, my view of myself absolutely crashed. And so most of my memories of myself and what I thought about was failure. So at one point in middle school was my last year of playing baseball. My mom's side of my family was really big on baseball, and they drove down 2.5 hours to watch me play a tournament game. I had been hitting really good. I worked up to a really good spot in the batting lineup, and they came down and they watched me play 2 games, and both those games I struck out all 3 times I hit. It's okay, I just messed up, but like inside I was sitting there and they were all patting me on the back, and I just felt worthless. Things really shifted when I started getting into pornography, and I never had a strong relationship with God, so I really didn't realize it was wrong. My mom caught me she caught me in 5th grade, but then when she caught me again is when I really experienced that first glimpse of what it was like to really hurt someone. She looked at me and she said, "How dare you bring this into my house?" All I thought to myself was that I was worthless, and I was garbage, and I wasn't good enough for God. I wasn't good enough for others. I was so depressed and ashamed of myself. I wouldn't eat for days. I would just lay in my room. I wouldn't want to talk to anyone. That fear of failure took off to a whole nother level, because it wasn't just fear of failing myself, it was fear of failing others and failing God. That confident, funny guy who I usually was wanted to get out, but I just couldn't. So I think after that point of feeling broken is when I really started coming to Christ and forming a tight relationship, because I needed that just to get through the day. The summer after my freshman year is when I went on my first missions trip to Haiti, and that was one of the best experiences I ever had, as God just kind of threw me into it, and that was His plan. And that was when I really realized that God had put me in all these situations for a reason. It was those times that I knew that God was real and that He was there for me. From sophomore to the early parts of my senior year, I felt like God was putting me in a lot of situations to make a difference, and I was constantly letting Him down. My senior year of football, my coach approached me and asked me to pray over the team before we ate and pray over the team before games. And I went into this just really excited. When I would pray, and I would go back and sit down, and my teammates would make fun of how I had talked or what I had said. They would count how many times I would stutter when I would pray, and I was there to be a leader, and I was there to make a difference, and yet I just wasn't good enough. I wasn't good enough for God at all. I wasn't good enough for His plans. I would turn away from Him because I was so ashamed of myself. I was so inadequate. I didn't feel good enough to get myself out of it. I didn't feel good enough to try. I just wanted to mope. God just made me realize that I was becoming someone that I didn't want to be. I started to really see what Christ could do with me, with a real relationship and with real grit, and really learning how to deal with my issues. Every time I took that one small step and just read a verse that day, it was always God showing me that I was forgiven. God had always been right there through everything I had been going through, just waiting for me to come back to Him. It got easier and easier to make that choice. He was always the answer to all of it. I learned that even when I was connected with God and I allowed Him to work through me, I would still fail. And just that I didn't have to focus on succeeding in everything I did, because God was going to work through me even in my failures. That's what I'm trying to learn to do now, is to not just come to terms that I made a mistake, but to really forgive myself and accept that I am loved and that God has forgiven me. I just couldn't be satisfied with my identity as an athlete or in school, that my true happiness would come from Him.